Um, so I guess we'll get started. Janani, just
Yes.
add the people in as and
Yeah.
when they're joining. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session on Introduction to Scaled Agile Framework. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you very much, first of all, for registering and then joining. This is actually the first of a series. This will be the first of a series of webinars that we are conducting, introducing the Scaled Agile Framework, and then the related concepts in terms of scaling agility using the Scaled Agile Framework in organizations. So myself and Janani, we got together, we talked about this and the importance of the Scaled Agile Framework. And we also invited one of our mentors in a way, Pranjal Swarup, joining from India. I'll give a formal introduction about all three of us. So without further ado, let me do that introduction. First of all, I'll start off with introducing Pranjal. So Pranjal is actually a representative from the Scaled Agile Inc. itself. He's the country manager for India and the ASEAN region for Scaled Agile. Pranjal is a SAFE program consultant. He's also a trainer, coach, and consultant for SAFE implementations. Pranjal has over 16 years of experience. I think Pranjal has started off as a software engineer, like most of us, and then played different roles in different companies like Accenture and then Infosys. And then in his current role, he is looking into developing the practice and then the Scaled Agile framework and the knowledge and partnerships that Scaled Agile builds with organizations around this region. So welcome, Pranjal, and thank you very much, first of all, for accepting our invite and joining this session.
Sure.
We would,
Thanks for having me.
Yep. And we would really like to hear from you about success stories in terms of SAFE implementations. Your input would be really valuable. Next, I'll introduce Janani, a good friend of mine. So Janani is the enterprise agile coach at Virtusa Corporation here in Sri Lanka. I think Janani is the only person who's in the progress of becoming a certified Scrum trainer from Sri Lanka. And then Janani is also, Janani, have you done the exam yet, SAFE program consultant, or not yet?
Not yet. Very soon.
Yet. Okay, so Janani has also undergone training for SAFE program consultant, and soon she will be a SAFE program consultant as well. Janani is a SAFE agilist, certified Scrum professional, and then ICF certified coach. And she's also a licensed Scrum ambassadors trainer. Janani is involved in a lot of training and consulting work, as you all know, in terms of bringing in agile practices and making sure that everyone is aware and then finding better ways of practicing agile. Talking about myself, I'm Rumesh Jetunga. I'm the agile coach at Wiley Global Technology here in Sri Lanka. I'm also the director and founder of Atra Holdings Private Limited, which is also a training and consulting firm here in Sri Lanka. Mainly focusing on agile, scaled agile, and then business analysis, management 3.0 related trainings. I'm also a SAFE program consultant, a SAFE agilist, a SAFE Scrum Master, and then certified Scrum professional, and also an IC Agile certified coach. So our LinkedIn profiles are also given over here. If you all have any questions, or if you all want to get in touch with us in terms of anything, any clarifications that you all have, reach out to us. And then in terms of today's webinar, this would be the agenda for today. So each one of us will be taking one topic over here, and our target is to present these three topics or talk about these three topics within 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor for any questions. If you all have any questions while we speak, feel free to put those on the chat, and then we'll open up everything. I mean, you all can unmute yourself and ask those questions right at the end. So I'll be going first. I'll be talking about what the scaled agile framework is. And then Janani would dig deep into why the scaled agile framework is important. And then Pranjal would bring in case studies and success stories of safe implementations. So without further delay, let me introduce what the scaled agile framework is. So before I talk about the scaled agile framework, I'm assuming that most of the people who have joined this session are already practicing agile at team level. You all know what agile is, and you all know what the agile framework means. Framework simply talks about building blocks in terms of values, principles, roles, and then different ceremonies or artifacts, and everything that constitutes agile, and then building agile practices in organizations. And I'm sure you all are practicing some form of agile in your organizations. It can be an agile methodology like Scrum, Kanban, a lightweight agile methodology like Scrum, Kanban, XP, and so on. Or even if you are practicing any scaled agile methodology, a heavyweight agile methodology like SAFe, which is one scaling methodology that we'll be talking about today, a framework that we'll be talking about today. And then in addition to that, you all know there are different types of scaling frameworks that are introduced to the world. So I gave that introduction because you all might be practicing agile at team level at the moment. So we are now going to look at what does it mean to practice agile in a larger context. It can be large in terms of the number of people who are involved in such an initiative. It can even be to solve a larger level problem. Scaling agile is not only to do with having more people involved in an initiative. No, it's also to do with solving larger level problems and ensuring that there is alignment among all the entities that are involved in different levels of an organization. So we would be talking about enabling business agility, starting from strategic management level in terms of identifying initiatives, right down to the point of implementing these initiatives at the team levels that we most probably are involved in. So I'll be actually taking a sort of a different approach in terms of introducing the scaled agile framework to you all. Finally, I'll be showing you all the scaled agile big picture, but I'll be taking you all through a set of slides which is more familiar to you all, most probably. I'm sure you all have seen the planning onion before. So basically the planning onion talks about 5 main levels of planning that can happen. If you take agile teams or team members working in smaller agile contexts, they would get involved in planning mostly at a day level or at an iteration level. So if you take Scrum, for example, we would be planning for a 2-week iteration. We would identify what needs to be done, and then we would identify the stories and then tasks that needs to be done within that 2-week time period, and breaking it down to lower level day level plans and then implementing that. As we all know, this plan is part of a larger level plan. Multiple iterations would or multiple sprints would consist of would form a release, and then this release can be to build a product, and building the product might involve multiple such releases, and then this building a solution or a product can be as part of a larger level portfolio. Again, I'm assuming that you all have an understanding about what a portfolio is, and then a program and a project is. So I'll not be touching upon that. But if you take software product implementations, it would not be simple as what you see on this slide. It would not be just one single product that we are building. It would not be just one single team that would be working towards creating this particular solution. So if you actually look at the planning onion in an organization, the context of an organization, a portfolio can actually involve multiple related products which needs to be integrated, which needs to be able to communicate with each other, and which should be actually to achieve a certain strategic objective that an organization might have at portfolio level. And it cascades down to multiple releases for a product, and then it cascades down to the lowest level that we saw earlier in terms of iterations and day level planning. So the planning onion is actually not simple, as we can see. Now, let me talk about the scaled agile framework in a nutshell. So basically, we are getting involved in, we as software development teams or team members basically get involved at the lowest level. That might be the primary area in terms of visibility that we have. So I'll start off with the portfolio level. Maybe at the start of a particular year, at a planning meeting, at a strategic level planning meeting, organizational management, the management of the entire organization, or even a business unit would identify strategic level initiatives. It might be to increase productivity of a certain business unit. It might be to increase the productivity of a particular product or a process that is there in the organization. At a portfolio level, we would identify areas for improvement. And what would happen is, through this planning, there would be large level initiatives, or we call these epics in SAFe, would be identified. And a portfolio backlog, a portfolio Kanban would be created based on all these high level initiatives that are identified. This would need to go through a certain evaluation process. So the portfolio management team would identify the vision and then strategic level themes or areas of interest that needs to be addressed. And then based on that, a certain set of initiatives would be identified. But as we all know, an organization can't be investing money on all these initiatives. So the organization needs to filter and find out the initiatives that would add the highest business value, and it's most important for the organization. So there would be a certain funnel that would be involved in terms of evaluating these initiatives. The scaled agile framework digs deeper about this funnel, and then identifying, validating these initiatives and so on. So this funnel would be first of all identified, and then there would be a review and analysis process through which a certain set of initiatives are selected, prioritized, and selected for implementation. Basically, this identification of initiatives would need to be aligned with the business value that is generated through these initiatives. So identification of value streams, which Janani would be talking about in a little bit more detail, identification of these value streams, and then identifying the release trains. We call these agile release trains in scaled agile framework. Identifying these agile release trains which would actually be doing the implementation of these the software products to support those value streams would happen at the program level. So based on the initiatives that are identified at portfolio level, program level, capabilities, or we call these features in SAFe, would be identified, and a feature level, program level backlog of features would be identified, which would basically be managed by the program management. So program management would identify through certain ceremonies. I'll be talking about those ceremonies maybe on the next slide. The program management team would plan what needs to be built within a certain time period as a certain roadmap, and then program increments would be created based on a cadence, which would again drill down to the team level. So the teams, there might be multiple teams working on different capabilities capabilities or features of the solution identified at program level. And then there would be team level backlogs consisting of user stories, as we know, which would be to develop these features which are identified at program level. So practices like Scrum and Kanban, which we practice at team level, would be carried out at the lowest level. And then these all these teams which are working on features would need to be aligned with the cadence of implementing these features at a program level. So main objective of SAFe is to keep this alignment with the lowest level teams that are implementing the solution, and then the higher level program and portfolio level initiatives or objectives that need to be met through whatever the teams are carrying out. So I'll show this particular SAFe big picture diagram as the last slide that I'm going through. Like I said, this is just a brief introduction to Scaled Agile Framework. So the SAFe big picture, if you all navigate to www.scaledagileparamework.com, you all would see this big picture. The big picture diagram is centered around customer centricity. Everything on the Scaled Agile Framework is based on the customer centricity and achieving business agility while maintaining that customer centricity. And then we have the core values of Agile. We all know there are 4 main Agile values and then 12 main principles. And then SAFe also talks about SAFe principles, 10 SAFe principles, and the Lean Agile mindset, the house of Lean. Different concepts are discussed, which forms the base based on which everything in the Scaled Agile Framework would be built. And then there are 4 main configurations of SAFe. Essential SAFe, this is the bare minimum that is required when implementing SAFe. And you would see your team level Agile practices like Scrum and Kanban, as well as program level Kanban being part of essential SAFe. And then we have large level solution implementations, another configuration of SAFe, and then portfolio SAFe. The picture that I have given over here is full SAFe. If you are going for a full SAFe implementation, we would consider all 3 levels that are shown over here. And again, there's not enough time to go through this in detail. There are seven main competency categories. These are the competency categories that you all see on your left-hand side: organizational agility, lean portfolio management, enterprise solution delivery, agile product delivery, and so on, and lean agile leadership. These 6 plus lean agile leadership forms the 7 competency categories of business agility. And then under that, there are 3 competencies each. So it comes to 21 competencies. And then there are different roles that are involved in each of these levels. At team level, as we all know, we have Scrum Master, Product Owner, and then the team, which again can be rolled up or cascaded up to different other roles at different levels of this framework. So this is just SAFe. I mean, an introduction to SAFe and a description about SAFe in a nutshell. Now I invite Janani to take you all through the importance of SAFe and why we need to think about proper SAFe implementation. Over to you, Janani.
Thanks, Ramesh. So I see there are some questions coming. What we do answer now, or we do answer at the end of the session?
Let's answer at the end of the session, isn't it? Let's take up all those questions.
Sure. Yeah, great. So let me share my screen. Ramesh, you have stopped sharing? Right, so I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see the screen?
Yes, Janani.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So first of all, again, thank you so much for being with us, and we appreciate that you are keeping the momentum to learn and transform. So let's see why SAFE is resourceful for large, complex organizations. As we told, this is just the beginning of a series of webinars. So today, the focus is to focus on the unique value proposition of SAFE over other frameworks. But before that, before we introduce, I would like to hear from you all. What are the challenges that you face today when your business portfolio expand, when your teams expand, when the complexity of work expand? Just put it in chat and take just few seconds and put what challenges you face already. Let's take a minute for that. Ramesh, what are the challenges that you see in the chat?
So I see one message. I think it's Pranjal. Alignment to the strategy.
Great. Alignment and strategy. So anyone else want to share?
Yeah. So Nelum is saying the definition of scope is not clear at any time due to the miscommunications on teams.
Okay. Okay. The scope challenges, the poor communication. What else you want to share? Okay. Keep sharing your challenges because we want to start from there actually. So moving forward. So for us to understand why SAFE is resourceful for large organizations, we're going to go a little bit to the history of industry revolution. So if you can see, about 100 years ago in the early 20th century, if you look at our systems were pretty simple, comparatively simple. What I refer as simple means that the relationship between the cause and effect is obvious to all. Take an example, like you are going to make a basic butter cake, okay? So you can find a recipe from anywhere from the internet, or you can ask from someone else because best practices are already available. So if you know that you use the exact ingredients and use the exact steps, you're going to get a nice butter cake. So that's what I mentioned as simple. So you can simply sense or plan and categorize, come up with a work breakdown structure, and respond, come up with some action items. So if you look at even the management thought process was different to how we think today. If you remember the Frederick Taylor, father of scientific management, so he believed workers are not able to understand their work. All tasks should be scientifically studied and they must be trained, and shift all the responsibility of the organizations of work from worker to manager. So basically managers should only do thinking and workers should be doing the implementing the tasks. Okay. Maybe these things worked because the systems were simple, right? So let's see what happened after a couple of years. Now we go to the 1950s, we get more complicated systems. Now, what are complicated systems means the relationship between the cause and effect requires some level of analysis or an investigation. So let's take an example. It could be a manufacturing a car or sending a rocket to moon. So there are series of inputs, series of steps, and series of outputs. Yes, it's difficult, but more and more you investigate and analyze these inputs, steps, and outputs, you can get expertise and you can keep on improving and optimizing, right? So that's why we say sense, analyze, and respond. So that's why the father of lean, the Edward Deming, talk about the improving the flow, total quality management, and reduce waste. Now that's coming from 1950. Now what happened? We are moving to the 21st century and we get more and more complex systems. So what do we mean by complex? So it's different from complicated also. So which means the relationship between the cause and effect can only be perceived in retrospect. What does that mean? Your operating environment itself is changing. Small, tiny parts working heterogeneously. So it's really difficult to predict if you exactly follow A, B, Z, you're exactly going to get the X, Y, Z, all right? So let's take an example, very simple example. In nature, we can find n number of complex systems. If you see a colony of ants trying to survive, or a school of fish working as a one entity to save from the predators, or any sports, right? It could be the cricket or soccer. So you see the interaction between the people or the elements are vital, because they can't predict the operating environment itself. It itself uncertain. So more than a detailed process or a fictitious plans, teams need to strengthen their interactions, communication, and feedback loop, because the decisions are made based on the available facts and knowledge, and they have to adapt based on the situation, right? So that's how we move from the simple to complicated to complex systems, right? So that's where the agile starts coming to the surface. So that's why we talk about the individuals and interactions over processes and tools, work in software. Likewise, this is why the agile values become significant, because we are working now and we are facing more complex situations rather than simple or even complicated systems. So, but the million dollar question is, now the time has changed, the world has changed, the technology has changed, but aren't we still dwelling in the same old silos? If you can see, we still have our organizations are structured around departments where each department focusing on their own problem. Sales, hundreds of people in the sale are focusing to solve the problems in sales, and people in marketing care about marketing, people in finance care about finance. End of the day, who is responsible for the customer value, right? So do we have an operating system that really model the agile values and principles? It's good to say, right? Our first lesson in any agile training is this agile values and principles. But have you ever thought, what does it mean individuals and interactions over processes and tools in your organization? We always say, okay, people have to talk, people have to interact, but does your operating environment structure really allow that? That's a question that you need to ask yourself. So the challenge is, if you can see, we are structured in a very hierarchical way where we have the bureaucracy, but we are facing different nature of problems. Okay, so let's see some challenges in traditional organization structures. Well, first thing is slower decision making and less innovation, because as we discussed, the executives and managers are thinking, whereas the workers are deemed to be doing. So the decisions flows very inefficiently, and the actions goes very slowly to upwards. And it's very difficult to take quick decisions and give more room for innovation. And that's one challenge. And the other side is the less focus on customer value. If you can see, how we are structured is around the function, but the value flows the other side, right, towards your horizontal. So then the focus on value is less. And the other thing is the local optimization. Now, since we are structured on silos, we are trying to focus on the sales department or the marketing department or HR or IT and try to improve. Or we are trying to improve just one team, improve the stand up, improve the retrospective on this particular team. Yes, definitely we should, but we may not get the bigger ROI of being agile because we are not looking at the big picture, right? So those are some challenges in the traditional organization structure. And what Edward Deming says is like, if you if you continue to have this kind of silos, right? So what would happen is they become selfish, they become competitive within their own departments and try to be profit centers and fight with each other, and they will break the system, which you don't want to happen. Okay, so it's quite evidence that we need a change. But the problem, the burning question when we want to change is, how would we really balance between the innovation and stability, right? How do we really balance the innovation and stability? When we talk about the innovation, it's about your teams are focused on customer value. They have autonomy, right? They can take decisions on how things going to happen, and they are able to deliver value faster. On the other hand, stability means that you should be having a better alignment and some predictability. You can't let people go on different directions and do whatever they want to do, right? You need some alignment, and that's true. So we need some efficiency in decisions making and enable teams to deliver the value. So how do we balance both, and how do we enable both in our organization structure? So if you look at it, this is where we're going to talk about the dual operating system for business agility, because we don't want to be in a place like high alignment, low autonomy. Like always your boss says why you have to do it, what you do is, and how to do it. There is no autonomy at all. So this is where the bureaucracy becomes significant. And on the other hand, we also don't want to be in a place where low alignment, low autonomy. Neither the leaders nor your workers know what to do and why you do that, right? And on the other hand, the low alignment and high autonomy. The leaders have no control on how the work should be, how the people should be arranged, and why they should be doing that. So people are going on different directions. That is low alignment and high autonomy. But a nice place to be is high alignment and high autonomy, right? So, but how we get there, right? So how do we get there? So does that mean that we're going to completely trash the traditional organization system? No, not at all. Because we need that, because it has it has given us some time tested solutions to for the growth and for certain policies for people to retention the people. So we need that. But the solution could be, as SAFE suggests, is to not to trash, but what, and not to even start over, but to reintroduce a second system to restore the speed and innovation and entrepreneurial network, to bring that startup mindset, startup culture into this large system, while leveraging the benefits of stability and the hierarchical system, which we want to create some functional efficiency. Hierarchy is not to enforce bureaucracy. Hierarchy is to create a functional efficiency on better decisions making. Okay, so what does it look like? It looks like this. So we need dual operating system, some level of hierarchy to enable the efficiency and stability, the functional efficiency. And on the other hand, we need teams who are focusing on value, who are focusing on speed and innovation, which means for us to increase the customer centricity, right? So that is exactly the unique value proposition in SAFE, because SAFE is focusing, right? So SAFE is organizing the second operating system around so-called value streams instead of departments. We are moving away from those traditional departments who are only focusing on their work, not about solving a valuable customer problem, but now we are moving from those departments to value streams. So this is how the SAFE offers the enterprise that innovation and speed and growth. So let's take a very simple example, because value stream itself could be a one whole webinar, but I just want to give you an example on what a value stream would like. So let's take a bank as an example. Okay, so a bank would have different business portfolios, or like consumer banking, corporate banking, capital markets, etc. So under the consumer banking, Loan could be a value stream. Value stream is nothing but to simply say a series of steps which deliver a value to your customer and the organization, a series of steps. So a customer needs a loan to customer get the loan to make until he make the repayment and with the installments and the interest, right? That could be a value stream. Now in a traditional organization, when you do that, you might have to go these multiple departments. You see the departments like organization, transaction processing, loan serving, collections, and etc. You all have to go through all these departments. And this department, the people in the department will focus only on their own piece of work. Because of that, you might create a lot of dependencies. You might create a lot of communication gaps, uh, inefficient feedback loop. Because of that, delivering value to the customer get slow. So instead of organizing people on those departments, now the people, when I say people, the team, the multiple teams are now organized around the loan value stream. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is just the introduction, and we're going to talk how we even identify value streams in another webinar. We just want to share you an example on how we organize people around the value streams. So how would it look like end of the day? So you still have a level of hierarchy in order to enforce the functional efficiency, to take better decisions making, to have centralized and decentralized decision making. But the change would be the people now are not around the departments. They are focusing only on their own piece of work. Instead, now they are organized around the value streams, where you deliver end-to-end value to the customer. You are more customer focused teams. So that's how the SAFE, the value proposition of SAFE, how they maintain the stability, level of stability, as well as the innovation. And this is totally not something new, because our human body is a very nice example for dual operating system. We have our brain, right, giving some level of hierarchy, some given of functional efficiency, but all the other organs in our body, like the parts in our body, need to work together like a very efficient network to get done, to have a healthy person, right? So it's nothing new about it. If we look at in the system, in the human body or in the nature, we have this system. It's just a matter of we discover it as an example, right? So what you want to highlight is, so if you tell people where to go, but not how to get there, you'll be amazed on the results that you get. It's nice to say it as a quote, but how would you really implement it? It is one best way is that you're embracing SAFE, the unique value proposition of SAFE. Yeah, so that's what I have to share. Let's see if you have any questions, or we can move to Pranjal, Ramesh.
Yeah, Janani. I think we'll finish the sessions and then we'll take up questions.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So great. Can you allow me to screen share, Ramesh?
Yeah, let me stop sharing. And stop sharing.
Let me make you a admin, Pranjal. Give me a second.
Sure.
Yes. Now you are a co-host.
Okay. I'll share my desktop. Perfect. So I think that was very well articulated. I will go and take have us look at it from a certain like slightly different lens. So what you saw when Ramesh talked about, he talked about the actual framework itself to a certain extent. Of course, not going into all the details of it, because of course time doesn't allow for that. And then we took a step back where Janani spoke about the basic principles behind considering SAFE. And then I will even take a step back and take an industry view and show you some examples as to how do you work. And I've been watching some questions, so I think these are all relevant questions. So please have them flowing in, and we'll start taking them questions in the next 10 minutes. I won't take longer than that. So the reason why we are over here, and the reason why why any transformation is actually really important, is why Agile at an enterprise is really important, is because of this, what you see on your screen, right? This is a report from McKinsey and Company, where it says that business units, and the keyword over here is business units and not just the teams, right? The business units that had fully adopted an agile model before COVID-19 crisis outperformed units that hadn't. And you would be thinking, yeah, well, I know, I think, we keep on hearing about this, that agile is good and that, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I hear a different keyword over here, which is business unit. We have been practicing agile at a team level. And to Janani's point, right, think about the human system. And if the heart says that, well, heart in itself is a system, right? It's considered that to be an agile team. And then heart says that, well, I'm functioning properly. And brain says, well, I'm functioning properly. And other organs say, well, we are in our own self functioning properly, but we don't want to communicate with each other. That will be disastrous, right? So it's very important that we do not sub-optimize the systems. We optimize the entire system, have a systems view, have a systems thinking approach. And that is where it becomes important to look at it from the operating model or an operating systems lens. Now, what is that? What is an operating model? It is an industry term which has existed for quite some time. An operating model is nothing but it is a blueprint of your organization which dictates as to how would you organize your resources and manage your resources around customer and value. How would you translate your strategy to execution? And what Bain and Company over here breaks it down into is that it actually talks about 5 key choices, which actually drives an operating model, which is around your structure, the organization, the architecture of the organization itself, and the accountabilities that different systems or subsystems in an organization would have. It also talks about the governance, because of course we need to have a lean governance model on top of the system that we have. What are the ways of working? And the ways of working is how you have different ceremonies, how you have the flow of value from one team to another, from one function to another, or if you are working cross-functionally, which is good, then how do you organize yourself around customer? And then of course, enabling and sustaining those capabilities, right? You have to keep on enabling and you have to sustain that as well. And it clearly says that the organizations which have had a robust operating model, they actually outperform the one which don't have that, right? So on the right-hand side over here, as you see, that of the analysis which was done a few years ago, I'm pretty sure this gap has even increased in this context that we are into right now, that the EBIT or earnings before income tax, which is pretty much your earnings, right? Of the companies who had a robust operating model, they had around, I would say, 2.5 points difference in terms of the earnings before income tax. And the average revenue growth, again, was around 1 point some difference over there, right? So it actually is a differentiator. We need to think about that, how whatever practice that we incorporate, however we organize ourselves within an organization, at the end of the day, it should translate to the earnings for the company, the revenue for the organization, the value for the customer, the bottom line, the cost savings for the organization, and of course, market share and what have you, right? So if these are not translating to these, I think the organization would not exist, right? So to expand on that, where does operating model fit into the context of the transformation that we have been talking about all this while? Everybody talks about digital transformation and business transformation, but let me also share a view on the digital transformation, which is again taken from Bain and Company. And I really like this because it's very simple, and it actually, most of the people relate to this. It actually talks about 4 pillars. The first pillar over here is your digital strategy, essentially answering the question where your business should be going. What is it that you want to be in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, what have you? And how do you achieve that future business state? So you imagine the future and start working backwards to be able to develop your capabilities in the present so that you can be that in the future. The second question is, or the second pillar over here is the business model. Essentially, how do you capture the raw need of the customer, organize yourself around that need of the customer or the value of the customer, and deliver that to the customer, right? This is essentially a business model that's easy. It becomes interesting in the third and the fourth over here, because we talk about enablers, and most of the people think about whether it's a transformation or a change, and people sometimes say that, hey, I'm moving my platform from Azure to AWS. Is that a transformation or is that a change? And if it does not help you either respond to a market disruption, or it doesn't help you disrupt the market itself, it cannot be termed as a transformation, right? So technology aspect comes only as part of the enabler. So you see data, technology, and operating model over there. And the fourth pillar over here is the orchestration. How do you manage the change? How do you go about ensuring that all the organs are talking to each other? If there is a surgery that I need to do, if there's a medication that I need to provide to a certain organ, I need to ensure that every other organ, the entire system, responds to it in a harmonious way or harmoniously, right? So how SAFE helps over here, Scaled Agile Framework helps over here, is in two sections. One is the operating model, and second is managing the change. It also does influence your digital strategy and business model, but that could be a topic for another time. But I want to focus on the operating model and the change aspect. And with this lens, think about this. We thought that, yeah, digital transformation, everybody's going through it, but then COVID-19 comes and it becomes a thing of like today. It's really required. And so were many companies thinking as well. And I want to show you what some of the successes that we have seen in different organizations around the world. So let me switch to browser. And this is scaledagile.com. We have two web properties or two websites. One is scaledagile.com, which is a business-oriented company website. And there's another one, which is scaledagileFramework.com, which is the framework website, right? So I'll come back to this website. And if you go to this website, scaledagile.com, you go to the resources, look at the customer stories over here. And there is plethora of empirical evidence that you will find over here on how different customers have adopted SAFE and how they benefited. Of course, you can go over here and read at your own leisure. If I expand on industries, you will find just about any industry: banking, automotive, communications, education, finances, telecommunications, technology, what have you, right? So you have case studies over here. And of course, if you don't find something over here, then it might be highly likely to also refer to SAFE customers in the news. So these are all different publications by the customers themselves, which we have linked over here. So this is handy. For ready reference, I have opened 3 or 4 quick case studies over here. One that I will want to have you look at it from quickly over here is that of Amdocs. And I think everybody understands Amdocs. They are the providers of the, especially in the telecom industry, providers of the, the operating systems, operating support systems and business support systems, operation support and business support systems, major player around the world. And they had, and this is a couple of years ago, huge organization, thousands of employees across different countries. The challenge that they were facing was that long scoping and development times failed to keep pace with the rate of changes happening within Amdocs client organizations. And I think I saw the question over there as well. Somebody asked the question that whenever we're expanding geographies, expanding the teams, expanding the scope, how do we ensure that everybody is aligned, right? So that's where SAFE was implemented. Now, I don't have time to talk about the step-by-step as to how that was done. But then you can go over here, read through it. Some of the key results that we saw were over here on the left-hand side. There were frequent deliveries to production, which was necessitated by the business environment. There was 30% faster delivery for user acceptance testing. There were monthly demos with the customers, enabling faster feedback and enabling better alignment with the customer, and so on and so forth. The other one, which is a major telco player around the world, Telstra, I think everybody knows what Telstra is. And they had challenges, the similar challenges around global organization, aligning to the customer organizations. And when they adopted SAFe, they saw their delivery cycle time coming down from 12 months to 3 months. 6 times increase in delivery frequency, 50% cost to delivery reduction, 95% decrease in product defects, 100% products delivered on time and budget, and so on and so forth, right? So go over here, read about it. To the banking industry, Deutsche Bank. And if you're thinking about financial services, of course, we have a lot of banks in Sri Lanka. And typical questions, typical challenges with the financial services have been bogged down with are either the management challenges or the regulation challenges or the rollout and expansion. How do you respond to changes in the environment? How do you reduce costs? Of course, there are huge cost pressures in the financial services. How do you ensure that you have strategic alignment? Operational efficiency is very, very critical in banking and financial services. Organization transformation, working with multiple vendors. Janani was giving the example of organizing the value streams for the loans organization. So those things, and then of course, they were able to use Scaled Agile Framework. They have this nice presentation, which they presented recently at our European SAFe Summit. And it's available on the same page that I just talked to you about, right? How were they able to solve those challenges? And of course, I took this example of Royal Philips. It has been a long time customer in a technology and a healthcare industry, and in the industry which, where things have to be on time and there is zero tolerance for defects and non-alignment. And they had these challenges as well, that they sought to transition from traditional development to agile, as well as bring an agile mindset to business units, right? The keyword again is business units, not just the agile teams, right? So how do you address that? How do you move that just a software thing, agile just being a software thing, to agile being a business thing? And that is where they implemented Scaled Agile Framework, where they saw the results of the average release cycle going down by multiple folds, cycle time going down by multiple folds, releasing on demand, and so on and so forth, right? So these are some of the examples which you can go ahead and look at over here on the website under different sections. You have different examples coming from global organizations over here. And I think I would also let you see there's another sort of empirical evidence which the industry analysts like Gartner shared in a report recently, that Scaled Agile Framework is the most used and considered framework, and actually compares it against other frameworks as well. So that's where you see that the section at the top, and you compare it against other frameworks. So you can always read that by going to Scaled Agile website. And there's a detailed report over here. If you want to read the detailed report, it goes into the details of what were the key findings and the objective and how they used and what was the analysis that they went through, how they did that analysis, and other data points, and so on and so forth, right? So all this is available, plus more industry data points, which we will be sharing with you, as Ramesh and Janani mentioned, that this is one of the first series or first interaction in the series of webinars that we will be bringing to the community in Sri Lanka. And we will be diving deeper into the subsequent webinars to answer, help you understand, of course, appreciate what is business agility, and then, of course, answer any questions that you might have. With that, I think we are closing or nearing our time box. Do we want to move to the questions? I think we have a few questions as I started seeing.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Pranjal. I think, that was really important, you bringing in these data points, and so that people actually understand the importance of the Scaled Agile Framework, and then seeing these success stories actually galvanizes that importance as well. So without further delay, let's go on to the questions. I saw one question from Chaturaka. Maybe either one of us can take up this question. Would you recommend SAFe for a product company? I get the feeling that everything is set on the portfolio level, and then actual implementation teams doesn't have any say on what's being built. Anyone wants to take that? Or?
So I think in short, I would like to answer that, just go to scaledagileFramework.com, go to the overview tab. These are the 7 core competencies that you see over here. It doesn't say that you have to just have these competencies on the left-hand side. It breaks it down into the left and right. Left is the execution-based competencies, right is the strategy-based competencies. And what I was alluding to earlier is that team and technical agility, while that's good, but that's not enough. And that's where you start having other competencies or building other competencies within the organization as well around design thinking and customer centricity and DevOps practices with the agile product delivery organization. And if you are a large organization like a Boeing, Airbus, or what have you, or some of the examples that we just saw, Royal Philips and Telstra, how do you ensure that you have large systems going live and you have lean systems and solution engineering concepts applies to those? And on the right-hand side, portfolio management is essential because portfolio, how you manage your portfolio is essentially going to dictate how your strategic themes or your strategy is translated to execution. Without having lean portfolio practices and the 3 dimensions that SAFe talks about, the strategy and investment funding, agile portfolio operations, and lean governance, without applying those, it's very hard to determine how would your strategy translate to execution. And then, of course, around organizational agility, strategic agility, creating continuous learning culture within the organization and not just people getting trained and just doing their jobs. And then, of course, nothing happens without the support of lean agile leadership, without the leaders in the organization committing themselves to those principles. And of course, at the end of the day, everything revolves around customers. So customer centricity. So to your point, yes, product organizations is definitely part of it. In fact, just Google about it. There are different talks from Mick Kirsten from his book, Moving from Projects to Product. That's an excellent read if you want to read that book. It talks about why should you not be executing projects, but be a product organization. So of course, the focus also is on building these competencies, but then portfolio management is key for the success of helping strategy translate to execution.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Janani, go ahead. I'll also bring in an example from Wiley as well.
Sure. So adding to Pranjal, so Chaturaka, this was the exact perception I also had. Okay, I get the feeling that everything is set on portfolio level, and then the teams have no say on actual implementation. So when I was first introduced to SAFe about 4 or 5 years ago, I had the same feeling, because if you look at the graphic, then you see the portfolio program teams. Then I was wondering myself, okay, what's the big change? And that is exactly what we share today, the dual operating system, right? So your teams are now more focused on customer centricity. They are organized itself on the customer value. So you have to visualize in a way, this portfolio, the levels are not there to infuse the bureaucracy. In fact, now you can visualize the teams are at the top, because they are the people now delivering value to the customer. All the other the program level and portfolio level are the enablers of the team members. It's not for the other way around, that you put only the decisions, but it's more about enabling those teams who are organized around the value stream to enable those team members, which is now when I learn more and more about the SAFe, that's what I have developed, the new perception that I have developed it. So definitely my understanding is that it's very much important for product companies.
Yeah. So just to add to that, so coming from Wiley, Wiley is a product company with teams working from multiple locations. We have teams in Sri Lanka, in Russia, in Australia, in USA, working in different time zones, with business owners from different business owners or product owners from different areas again. It's actually the team collaborating with these business owners and the product owners on an ongoing basis. It's a two-way communication that needs to happen. So like we said, everything is built on the agile values like transparency, inspection, and adaptation. all those agile values still stand firm. So it's a matter of practicing those, keeping the customer in the center, and then in terms of delivering value through the value streams that we identify. Any other question? Did you all see?
Yeah, there's another question: how to keep the same level of delivery speed when you work as small team and when your organization grow. So I share my perspective, and I think it's from Chaturaka also. So so let's take an example. So think about Chaturaka before you get married. I know now you're married, right? Before you get married, when you want to go watch a movie, right? It was so simple, right? You just take a decision. Okay, I want to watch a movie. You just go there. It's quite so simple, right? Now you're married. You're going with your family. What is the problem? Isn't that so simple now? Because we are a family, you are creating more dependencies. You have to check your wife's schedule, you have to check your kids' schedule, they're having classes, they have to cook, and there are so many dependencies. So how would you do when you want to go and watch a movie with the family? What is the success factor? If Chaturaka is still there. Isn't that the better coordination, right? You have to coordinate. So in SAFE, you will see there are ceremonies, just like we have in Scrum ceremonies. In SAFE also, there are multiple ceremonies, best practices, new roles are there to improve this coordination. So coordination and communication is the key. Yes, definitely that's a challenge, as you correctly mentioned, when your teams are expanding, when your portfolios are expanding, there is a slowness that we create, right? So the best way is that creating that right coordination, keeping everyone in a very tight feedback loop, and this is where the Scrum, the safe ceremonies, new ceremonies, and new events are there to keep that coordination. That's my understanding, and please, Pranjal, Ramesh, bring in.
Yeah, if you all see the diagram that is on the screen, which Pranjal has shared, you all will see the cadence, the development cadence that is followed. You would see these are the areas where the development team would be working on. These are basically our iterations, and all these iterations would be aligned with a program increment. And then there would be ceremonies even at a higher level in terms of PI planning. We call it program increment planning. And then a system demo that would happen on an ongoing basis at the end of the iteration, followed by right at the end, we do an innovation and planning activity, a sprint to look at innovation and improvement. So multiple ceremonies, as what Janani mentioned, is going on in terms of creating this alignment, and then making sure that everyone working as part of this agile release train are aligned, and then aligned towards achieving the objectives that are defined for this value stream. Any other questions? Do we have any other questions?
There's a question on DevOps. Is this where the DevOps and TechOps term comes? Like representing several questions in small team rather than having big separate teams.
What was this related to? Do we know?
Okay, who's asking the questions? Nelum, are you there? If you can explain a bit on the question.
Yes, hi, Jan.
Yeah.
I actually asked whether in scaled agile, is that mean like since that like we don't have that differentiate between the portfolio and then like specific areas, is it is these terms like having combination in a team, is it coming under SAFE or it's agile as it is?
Yeah, so Pranjal, you want to take it up?
Sure.
Yes.
I think what she's asking is that is DevOps part of scaled agile? And I think one of the most common confusion that people think of it that agile and DevOps are two different things, and which actually they are not, right? They cannot be in isolation. Like you cannot be just a DevOps organization, and you cannot be just an agile organization without DevOps practices, right? And that's where, if you notice this tab over here, under Agile product delivery. That's where we focus on DevOps and continuous delivery pipeline. That's one of the competency. And in the construct on the framework, you see over here that there is a continuous delivery pipeline, CI/CD, as you might be already aware of as an industry term, whereas continuous exploration, continuous integration, and continuous deployment happens across all the iterations as well, right? So it's not that only this part, there is only continuous exploration happening, and in this part, there's only integration happening, and so on and so forth. So it's embedded in every iteration. So SAFe takes an instance of, or the stance on more of a culture thing rather than a technology thing. Of course, technology can support, but if the culture does not support it, then no technology can support that, right? So you could use any tools that you deem appropriate for your business requirements, but we need to build the calmer approach, which you can click over here and go to more details in that article and read about it. What does it talk about? And you would also find articles on DevSecOps, and that's going to be, more visible going forward in the framework. But these terms, of course, definitely Agile and DevOps cannot exist in isolation. They have to be together. And that's what it is embedded at the program level, at the Agile release train level, as you see it on the framework over here.
Exactly,
And
because, yeah.
Just to add to that, I think if you look at DevOps, SysOps, and TechOps, everything is to do with creating the engineering framework. We call it the runway, architectural runway in SAFe. So just imagine the runway that we have at our airport. In Sri Lanka also, you all would have seen the runway in the past was really short. The amount of space that was there for a plane to take off was really small. But now you would see that the runway is also now expanding, and there's enough space for the plane to build up speed and then take off, right? So it's actually a matter of building that runway or the architectural framework. Keep on building it as we go along through all these different practices that we are talking about, DevOps and so on, so that the product or the solution also can take off. That's the main objective.
Yes. So adding to Ramesh, Ramesh earlier mentioned about the cadence, right? Having that alignment, and teams are working in synchronously. So if we are to have that cadence, DevOps become even more essential in SAFe, because team has to work, together rather than, siloing on the dev teams and ops teams, that work together to deliver working or valuable software in constant intervals. So DevOps is definitely there inside in the team level, they are practicing it. And also, as Pranjal mentioned, that you really can't differentiate Agile and DevOps, because our first Agile principle itself says that. What is our principle? Our highest priority is to satisfy customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So it is about DevOps, right? That the purpose of DevOps is to constantly deliver value to the customer with the collaboration of all the teams. So it's very much there in SAFe and with the team level.
Good. So hope we answered your questions. Do we have any other questions from anyone? Anyone would have any questions maybe regarding any training needs that you have? So we have Pranjal on the call. If you all have any questions about the training and certifications, you all can ask those as well.
I think the only point that I would like to make is that think about from the investment perspective, right? When you go for a training or any training for that matter, how do you apply that to your day-to-day context? Are you already an Agile organization, or are you on way to be an Agile organization? And you have a role to play in both, in both the cases. The role that you have to play is that how can you help ensure that your organization, your enterprise becomes successful? How do you help your enterprise respond faster to the changes which are happening on a day-to-day basis? How do you ensure that you bring harmony within the organization? And you could either be an influencer or could be a decision maker, but you have a role to play, right? You can definitely influence, you can definitely take this to your leadership, you can start influencing them, socializing them. And of course, in order to do that, you need to understand the topic better. In order to understand the topic, you go through the training, and that's how you take your journey. And then, of course, when you start creating this leadership of yours, then it helps you also progress into whatever pursuit that you have in your career journey. And that's where these certifications and trainings help you move into that path, right? So think about that why do you want to get trained? What is the end objective that you want to achieve? As I was mentioning over there in the digital strategy, like what is your career strategy? What is your business strategy? What is it that you want to do in the next 1 year, 2 years with your enterprise or with your career? And imagine that, and then start building your steps backward, and then see how do you take this. Because the truth is that, you know, every organization is going through transformation, and everybody has to start thinking about business agility, whether they adopt safe or any other practices. It's up to them, but business agility is definitely here. It's going to stay, and it's not like a buzzword. There is a lot of evidence which I just showed you. You can go on and read that. The successful enterprises and the difference between the successful enterprises and not so successful ones is just being not agile, right? There was a article written by Steve Denning as well a few days ago on LinkedIn, and he said that, you know, the market capture of the organizations like IBM and GE was low because, you know, and the Microsofts and the others were quite high because, of course, there could be multiple reasons, but one of the most critical reasons that he says in his article is that because these organizations, while you imagine or you can think that, you know, IBM and GE might be huge organizations and they might be doing everything right. However, it's not so. They were not really adopting the C-suite. The leadership was not really agile. And that's going to be the difference between this enterprise and that enterprise, right? The business environments are changing. What is the role that you can play in the success of your own enterprise or to your customer or your own career? That's for you to decide. Business agility is over here. It's going to stay. You have to decide what way do you want to take this forward to.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pranjal, for that message. I think, guys, so we are a bit over time. Finally, just to wind things off, I have put a message on the chat window. This is just to collect some feedback quickly. It's anonymous, so don't worry. Just log on to this link, ideaboards.com. There are two simple questions. Just you all can click on the plus mark against each topic that you see. If I can share my screen, I'll show the screen to you all so that everyone can see what I'm saying. So this is the page that you will get. You would see two questions. What did you like about the session? If you liked something about the session, and then what would you like to see in the future? What would you like to see in the future? Just click on the plus button. It will add a new sticky note like this. Just type in your thoughts. We'll give 1 minute just to add whatever you want. And then while you're adding, so like what we said, this is the start of a series of webinars. We have quite a number of sessions planned, some interesting topics where we'll be digging deep into certain practices of SAFe. So please do keep in touch, and if you all have any queries, reach out to any one of us, and then we hope to see you again sometime in the future. Thank you very much, and we will see you again.
Yeah, I
Thank
really
you,
appreciate you
everyone.
taking time. Yeah, this was really nice. I think taking time this late in the evening, I really appreciate you for taking time. And I hope to see you all virtually again, and hopefully physically as well sometime in the future.
Yep. Thank you very much, Pranjal. Thank you very much for your time as well.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Have a good night,
Yes.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.